Before I go into details to my presentations on regulation of trust or company service providers, I would like to give you a brief background to the licensing and the regulatory regime for TCSP. As you may be aware, there is an intergovernmental body known as Financial Action Task Force, in short FATF. FATF set up in 1989 and sets international standards on combating money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. Over the years, FATF has established an elaborate set of 40 recommendations based on which the international community has been strengthening regulation to combat money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. Hong Kong has been a member of FATF since 1991. The the Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorist Financing Ordinance, Financial Institution Ordinance, came into operation in April 2012 and requires the financial institution to implement customer due diligence, that's CDD, and records keeping requirements. That's set out in Schedule 2 to the Ordinance, that's AMLO in short, AMLO. And these requirements are considered by FATF as an effective way to delta and to disrupt money laundering activities and to ensure integrity of a financial system. Later this year, Hong Kong's anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regulatory regime will undergo mutual evaluation of FATF members' jurisdictions. Although generally, Hong Kong's anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regulatory regime is strong and effective, international standards have evolved quickly because of changing financial markets and securities landscapes. The government has therefore identified certain deficiencies in our anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing regulatory regime. One is the absence of the statutory customer due diligence and records keeping requirements for a particular group of people known as designated non-financial businesses and professions, in short, DNFBPs. These group of people include legal professionals, accounting professionals, estate agents, and trust or company service providers. We now go to have a look of the recommendations made by FATF. There are 3 recommendations in relation to these group of people, that is DNFBPs. For the first recommendation, 22, it states that DNFBPs should be subject to customer due diligence and record keeping requirements when they engage in specified transactions. For the definition of specified transactions, you can take a look of Section 5, capital A of the Amendment Ordinance, and it includes buy and selling of real estate, buy and selling of business entities, managing clients' funds, securities and other assets, management of banking, security and saving accounts, the organization of contributions for the creation, operation and management of corporations, management, creation, operation, and management of legal persons and legal arrangements. And for the definitions of trust or company service business, you can find the meaning in Section 1, Part 1, Schedule 1 of the Amendment Ordinance, and later I will give you a brief introduction on that. For Recommendation 28, it states that DNFBPs should be subject to effective systems for monitoring and ensuring compliance with anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism AML-CFT requirements. And for Recommendation 35, it states that there should be a range of effective, proportionate, and dissuasive sanctions, whether criminal, civil, or administrative, to deal with any non-compliance with AML-CTF requirements by DNFBPs. So if remedial action is not taken to deal with the deficiencies, it's almost certain that Hong Kong will receive adverse ratings in the coming mutual evaluation, and Hong Kong will have to face enhanced follow-up process. The perceived failing in the relevant areas as against FATF recommendations will then subject Hong Kong to frequent reporting and close scrutiny by other FATF member jurisdictions in the coming evaluation and during the annual plenary meetings. Because of that, the government has introduced an amendment ordinance that is the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Financial Institutions Amendment Bill 2017, which received its first reading at the Legislative Council meeting of 28th of June last year, and the bill was passed on the 24th of January this year. So under the amendment ordinance, the statutory customer due diligence and records keeping requirements now applicable to financial institutions are extended to cover legal professionals, accounting professionals, estate agents, and trust or company service providers when they engage in specified transactions. And relevant provisions under the Legal Practitioners Ordinance, Professional Accountants Ordinance, and Estate Agents Ordinance are amended to enable the Law Society of Hong Kong, Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and estate agents authorities to take disciplinary actions against their respective DNFBPs for their failure to comply with the statutory CDD requirements and records keeping requirements set out in Schedule 2 to the AMLO under the existing regulatory mechanism. Non-compliance with the requirements set out in these ordinances will be handled in accordance with the existing provisions under the 3 ordinances governing professional misconduct. And the relevant sanctions under the 3 ordinances include reprimands, civil penalties, suspension from practice, and revocation of license. So you may wonder, how about the 4th sector on the right-hand side? That's the trust or company service providers. Prior to the amendment ordinance, there is no legal authority having the statutory power to regulate or to oversee the activities of trust or company service providers or to assess whether they are suitable to carry out that business. And under the amendment ordinance, Companies Registry, being a government agency, is placed to administer the licensing regime and the regulations of the trust or company service providers. So as you may be aware, the new licensing regime came into operation on 1st of March, that's a few days ago. And any person who carries on a trust or company service business must apply for a license from the Registrar of Companies, and a license will be granted if the person has passed a fit and proper test. That is, the registrar is satisfied that the applicant is fit and proper to carry on the trust or company service business, and also the relevance of the applicant, that is, the partner, director, or the ultimate owner of the applicant, are fit and proper to be associated with the trust or company service business. And for any person who carries on the trust or company service business without a license will commit an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $100,000 and imprisonment for 6 months. And every TCSP licensee will have to implement the customer due diligence and records keeping requirements set out in Schedule 2 to the AMLO. The Register of Licensees is maintained by the registrar as required under the law, that is the Amendment Ordinance, AMLO. And you can find the name and the business address of the TCSP licensees from the register. The register is open for inspection free of charge on the website of the Companies Registries, Trust and Company Service Provider Licensing Regime. As I've mentioned before, the applicant as well as the relevant persons have to undergo fit and proper tests. So you may wonder who are the exact persons that need to undertake the test and what criteria the registrar will take in order to determine whether a person is fit and proper. So if the applicant is a individual who carries on business as a sole proprietor, then the sole proprietor, that's the individual, as well as each ultimate owner, with the meaning of ultimate owner set out in Section 53, capital A of the Amendment Ordinance, will have to undergo the fit and proper test. If the applicant is a partnership, then each partner and each ultimate owner have to undergo the fit and proper test. And if the applicant is a corporation, then each director and each ultimate owner will have to undergo the fit and proper test. In determining whether a person is fit and proper, the registrar will consider, among other things, and to see whether the person has committed any criminal convictions, in particular relating to those of money laundering, terrorist financing, drugs trafficking, organized and serious crime, or whether the convictions involving any dishonesty, corruptions, and fraud. If the person is an individual, then we'll have to decide whether he or she is an undischarged bankrupt, or whether he or she is a subject to any bankruptcy proceedings under the Bankruptcy Ordinance. And if the person is a corporation, whether it is in liquidation, or whether it's a subject to any winding order, or whether a receiver has been appointed in relation to it. So these are some of the factors that the registrar will consider and to determine whether a person is fit and proper. And you can find more detailed information in Section 53, capital H, and 53, capital I of the Amendment Ordinance. So under the licensing regime for TCSP, there will be exemptions from the licensing regime for a group of people, such as the authorized institutions, with the meaning set out in Section 2 of the Banking Ordinance, and also for the licensed corporation that operates a TCSP business and that is ancillary to the corporation's principal business, and with the meaning of the licensed corporation set out in Section 1, Part 1, Schedule 1 to the Securities and Futures Ordinance. And the exemptions also applies to accounting professional and legal professional. So accounting professional and legal professionals need not to apply for a license before they can carry out the trust or company service business, and they need not to undergo the fit and proper test. So in the coming two slides, I will give you more details to show you who are the accounting professionals need to apply for a license, and so as for the legal professionals. So you can look at the left-hand side for the CPA and CPA practicing as a sole proprietor, or firm of CPA practicing, partnership, not a firm of CPA practicing, but all partners and CPA practicing. All the partners are CPA practicing, as well as corporate practice. So these people need not to apply for a trust or company's service license before they can carry out the business. But the sole proprietor, the firm and its partners, the partnership and its partners, as well as the corporate practice and its directors, will be subject to the regulatory regime of the Hong Kong ICPA. So these people need to implement customer due diligence and records keeping requirements, but they will be supervised and monitored by Hong Kong ICPA. On the right-hand side, license is required for a partnership. At least one of the partners is not a CPA or CPA practicing, or it applies to corporations other than a corporate practice. And the corporation and directors who are not accounting professionals, or partnership and partners who are not CPA practicing, will be subject to the regulatory regime of the Registrar of Companies. But in these type of partnership and corporation, if they consist of partners who are CPA practicing and directors who are accounting professionals, they need not undergo the fit and proper test, and they will also subject to the regulatory regime of the Hong Kong ICPA. For legal professionals, same rationales apply. For the sole proprietor and the partnership, where all partners are legal professionals, they need not to apply for a license before they can carry on trust or company service business. And the sole proprietor, as well as the partnership and its partners, will have to subject to the regulatory regime of the Law Society of Hong Kong. On the right-hand side, for a partnership, but at least one of the partners is not a legal professional, and for the corporation, then license is required. And the corporation and directors who are not legal professionals, as well as the partnership and partner who are not legal professionals, will be subject to the regulatory regime of the Registrar of Companies. But for the partners who are legal professionals and directors who are legal professionals, they will be subject to the regulatory regime of the Law Society of Hong Kong in order to supervise and to monitor whether they have implemented customary due diligence and records keeping requirements in Schedule 2 of the AMLO. So in usual circumstances, a license, that's the TCSP license, is valid for 3 years, and the validity period is stated on the license. And a licensee, if a licensee would like to continue to carry on the trust or company service business, then the licensee have to make an application for renewal at least 60 days before the license is due to expire. And the applicants, as well as the licensee, the applicants, as well as the relevant persons of the licensee, will have to undergo the fit and proper test and to satisfy that they are fit and proper person before they can continue with the trust or company service business or be associated with the trust or company service business. In respect of revocation or suspension of license, if the registrar is no longer satisfied that the licensee, as well as the relevant person, that is the partner, director, or the ultimate owner, are fit and proper person to carry on the TCSP business, then the registrar can revoke or to suspend the license. In that situation, the registrar will issue a written notice to the licensee informing the licensee of the revocation or suspension, and the revocation or suspension of license will take effect at the time specified in the notice. In terms of registrar's approval to become a partner, director, ultimate owner of a TCSP licensee, for any person who would like to become the ultimate owner, director, and partner of a licensee will have to obtain prior written approval from the registrar of companies. And these people will also have to undergo the fit and proper test before they can carry on the business. And the test will be the same as I have mentioned before when the applicants would like to apply for a grant of the TCSP license. So any persons, that is the licensees, when they have filed the applications for a grant of license, or when they have filed an application for renewal of license, they have already provided particulars of the business as well as the persons involved in the business. So if there is a change in the particulars previously provided by the licensee to the registrar, then the licensee will have to notify the registrar of any change within 1 month, beginning on the date on which the change takes place. And also, if the licensee intends to cease to carry on the trust or company service business, then the licensee have to file a specified form to the registrar of companies, informing the registrar that the exact date, that the intended date of the cessation, and also the intention that the licensee would like to cease to carry on business. If the licensee fails to do so, then the licensee will commit an offense and will be liable on conviction to a fine of $50,000. Regarding power of inspection and discipline, to ensure proper compliance with the requirements set out in Schedule 2, that is the customer due diligence and records keeping requirements, then we have the officers of the registry will carry on on-site inspection and to investigate any incidents of non-compliance, and if appropriate, then disciplinary actions will be taken. So you may wonder under what circumstances will the registrar take the specified disciplinary actions. In this respect, you can have a look of Section 53, capital Z, which empowers the registrar to take disciplinary actions against the licensee for contraventions of, under the circumstances, like the licensee fails to carry on the customer due diligence and records keeping requirements, fail to comply with the regulations made by the registrar, fails to comply with the conditions under the license, and for any persons who become a ultimate owner, partner or director without obtaining prior written approval from the registrar, then the registrar can also initiate the disciplinary actions against the licensee. And also if the licensee fails to inform the registrar as to the intention to cease the business, or to inform the registrar the intended date of cessation of business, as well as the change in particulars. In all these circumstances, the registrar can initiate disciplinary actions against the licensee. And regarding the sanctions, the registrar can exercise the sanctions such as public reprimand, remedial order to remedy the contravention, and for a payment of pecuniary penalty not exceeding $500,000. So you may wonder, because there is a commencement already, we have already commenced the new licensing regime, whether there will be a transitional period for these new licensing regime, and the answer is yes. So any person who before the commencement of the licensing regime is already carrying on the trust or company service business, and for that purpose hold a valid business registration certificate, a deemed license will be granted to these people, to these persons, so that they can continue with the trust or company service business during the transitional period. The transitional period commenced on the 1st of March 2018, that's a few days ago, and it will last until the 28th of June 2018. That's 120 days. So if you would like to apply for a trust or company service license, then be quick and do prepare your application as soon as possible. A deemed license, however, will cease to have effect in certain events, such as if the deemed licensee does not apply for a new license on the expirations of the transitional period, that is until the 28th of June, no application has been made, or if the deemed license has applied for a license and the license is granted or rejected or have been withdrawn by the applicant, then the deemed license will cease to have effect. And also if the deemed licensee cease to carry on a trust or company service business, then the deemed license will lose effect, as well as if the deemed licensee does not hold a valid business registration certificate, then the deemed license will cease to have effect. As well as under specified termination events, then the deemed licensees will have no effect, such as if the deemed licensee is a sole proprietor, and on the day of his death, then of course the deemed license will have no effect. And if the deemed licensee is a partnership, then on the dissolution of the partnership, then the deemed license will have no effect. As well as if the deemed licensee is a corporation, on the commencement of winding up order of the corporation, then the deemed license will have lost the effect. So I have given you brief guidelines on the licensing regime and also on the compliance set out in Schedule 2 to the AMLO, as well as the disciplinary power, etc. So I would sincerely invite you to have a visit of our website where you can find all these informations. Regarding the first guideline on licensing regime, it provides more information on the licensing requirements, application procedure, ongoing obligations of a TCSP license, fees payable on the applications, as well as under what circumstances there will be a consequence for failing to comply with the requirements. So do have a look of the licensing regime guideline. And for the second guideline, that is on compliance, it will provide you a practical guidance to the licensee as well as to the senior management in order to devise and to implement the policies and the practices in order to meet the requirements for conducting customer due diligence and records keeping requirements set out in Schedule 2 to the AMLO. And for the last one, that's the guideline for imposition of pecuniary penalty. I have already mentioned before that the sanctions under the schemes include reprimands or the pecuniary penalty, etc. So you can have a look of the guidelines, which will provide you with more details in that respect. And also, under what circumstances the registrar can execute or to exercise the disciplinary action. Apart from that, we have also prepared external circulars, demonstration videos, pamphlets, and FAQ for your information. So I would sincerely invite you to have a look so that to provide you with a better understanding of the licensing regime as well as the regulation of the trust or company service providers. And these are all the information I would like to share with you today, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.